The night my brother got engaged, they laughed at me in my own hotel. His fiancée called me small town. My mother told me to dress better. They didn't know I owned the building. They didn't know I had proof she was using a fake name. And they definitely didn't know the FBI was already watching. By the end of that party, her real identity was on the screen. Federal agents were walking through the doors, and my brother was unclasping my grandmother's necklace from her neck in front of everyone. My name is Evelyn Harper, and this is how the perfect engagement turned into a federal arrest. Chapter 1: The Engagement Night. October 2024 carried that sharp, polished kind of chill Charlotte gets when fall first settles in. The city felt crisp, almost judgmental, like everything was being evaluated under clean white light. I stepped through the revolving doors of the Ashbourne Grand with my hands tucked into the pockets of my jeans, boots echoing softly across the marble floor. I could have changed before coming downstairs. I had a private suite upstairs. I had closets full of dresses that would have blended perfectly with the champagne silk and diamond studs filling the ballroom. But I came as I was, not to make a statement, just because I was tired of adjusting myself to fit into rooms where I was never fully welcome. The ballroom doors stood open. Music drifted out first, then laughter, then the low hum of polished conversations. White florals, gold accents, a custom backdrop reading Ryan and Leela, October 2024 in elegant script. Everything was curated to look effortless. The moment I stepped inside, I heard it. Leela Monroe leaned toward one of her friends and said, "I still could not shake the smell of a small town." The comment floated through the air, light and deliberate. The women around her laughed, not surprised laughter, the kind that signals agreement. I paused just long enough to feel the sting settle in my chest. Then I kept walking. Before I could reach my brother, my mother appeared in front of me. Diane Harper, 61 years old, pearls at her throat, posture straight as a ruler. Her eyes traveled from my boots to my hair. "You could have dressed more appropriately for an occasion like this, Evelyn," she said softly, soft enough to pretend it was private, loud enough that two nearby guests definitely heard. I smiled. I had learned that if I showed hurt, she would call it oversensitivity. "I came straight from work," I said. She exhaled in that familiar, disappointed way. "Try to blend in tonight." Then she turned away, already searching for someone more important. I stood still for a moment. I was standing in my own hotel, being told to blend in. The Ashbourne Grand belonged to Harper Hospitality Group, my company, the business I founded in 2016, after years of saving and studying and building from nothing. 5 boutique hotels now, all within driving distance across North and South Carolina. Properties I negotiated, renovated, staffed. Rooms I filled through strategy and patience. No one in that ballroom knew. They never asked what I did after leaving home in 2010 at 18. In their version of my life, I had moved somewhere vague and manageable, somewhere small enough not to threaten the narrative that Ryan was the success story. I found him near the center of the room, glowing in a navy suit that fit him better than confidence ever had. "Ev," he said, hugging me quickly, "you made it." I nodded. Leela turned toward me then, her smile flawless. "Evelyn," she said, like she was tasting the name. "Ryan's told me so much." There was something in her tone that suggested he had told her a curated version. My eyes dropped before I could stop them. The necklace. A pale stone pendant framed in delicate metalwork. Vintage. Familiar. It lay against Leela's collarbone as if it belonged there. My grandmother Martha wore that necklace every Sunday for as long as I can remember. In 2014, she wrote me a letter, careful looping handwriting, telling me she wanted me to have it one day. She called me her steady one, the builder, the one who would not wait for permission. She passed in 2015. My mother was in the room when Grandma said out loud that the necklace was mine. Now it was hanging from Leela Monroe's neck. "Isn't it beautiful?" Leela said to the woman beside her, fingers brushing the pendant lightly. "Diane gave it to me, a family heirloom. Meaningful," she added. My stomach tightened so quickly I felt lightheaded. I stepped closer, close enough that I could have reached out and unclasped it. One move, one scene, gasps, whispers, headlines, and neighborhood group chats. Evelyn ruins engagement party. That would be the story. Not that something promised to me had been handed away, not that years of being minimized had finally reached a visible symbol, just that I had been dramatic. So I did nothing. "It's beautiful," I said evenly. Leela's smile flickered for a fraction of a second. She expected a reaction. Ryan leaned toward me. "Ignore her. She's just nervous." I looked at him. Nervous people do not humiliate others for sport. I excused myself and moved toward the hallway outside the ballroom. The music softened behind me. The carpet muffled my steps. That was when I heard Victor Monroe. He stood near the service doors, phone pressed to his ear, back partially turned. "Just get us through this. Once he signs, it's locked. The money hits and we're clear." He paused. His jaw tightened. "No, tomorrow morning. Everything is lined up." He ended the call and adjusted his jacket before walking back inside, expression reset into charming father of the bride. My pulse quickened. Once he signs. I returned to the ballroom slowly, mind racing through possibilities. Ryan found me again, excitement bright in his eyes. "Tomorrow morning, I'm signing the agreement. $350,000 into the Florida project. It's early access. Leela's family is giving me an inside track." $350,000. My voice stayed level. "That's a significant investment." He nodded. "The returns are projected at over 20%, and Mom agreed we can use some equity from the house to reassure the bank, just as backup." The house. Our childhood home in Charlotte, purchased in 2002, refinanced in 2018 when medical bills mounted, still carrying over $200,000 in mortgage debt. Equity as backup. If the project failed, the bank would not be sentimental. My mind moved quickly through numbers, risk exposure, collateral, liability. Across the room, my mother was laughing too loudly with a group of women, gesturing toward Ryan and Leela like she was unveiling a prize. I thought about the transfers I had set up in 2019. $2,500 every month sent quietly to cover utilities, groceries, sometimes part of the mortgage. I never put my name on it. I never corrected the assumption that Ryan was the generous one. In my mother's mind, her golden son had been carrying the family. What if the Monroes believed that too? What if they thought the Harper family had deeper pockets than we did? I looked back toward Victor and Claudia. They were speaking with a small circle of guests now. Victor gestured broadly, confident, persuasive. I checked the time on my phone. 7:20 p.m. Less than 2 hours until Victor's formal toast. Less than 12 hours until Ryan signed documents that could put our family home at risk. I glanced once more at the necklace on Leela's throat. I had come to this party expecting awkwardness. I had not expected the possibility of losing everything my grandmother built, everything I quietly protected. The air in the ballroom felt thinner now, and for the first time that evening, I was no longer just the overlooked sister standing in the corner. I was calculating. Chapter 2. Cracks beneath the glass. The room no longer looked like a celebration. It looked like a setup. I stayed near the edge of the ballroom, letting conversations drift past me while I watched the Monroes more closely. When you run hotels for a living, you learn to read people. You learn who is here to impress, who is here to close a deal, and who is here to take something. Claudia Monroe was speaking to two women near the floral display. They asked where her family was from. She smiled, elegant and vague. "We move around a lot," she said. "My husband's work keeps us flexible." One of the women pressed lightly. "And where did Leela grow up?" Claudia paused for half a second too long. "Oh, she's lived in so many places," she said. "It all blends together." I watched her eyes. They did not search memory. They searched for the safest answer. Victor stood across the room, phone in hand again, not texting casually, reading something intently. His thumb scrolled fast. Every few minutes he glanced toward Ryan. Lila was holding court near the bar, telling someone she had studied at NYU Stern. "That must have been intense," a guest said. "What year did you graduate?" Lila laughed lightly. "Time flies when you are building a life. It feels like yesterday." Not an answer. The pieces were small on their own. Together, they formed a shape I did not like. Ryan found me again, glass of champagne in hand. "I wanted you to see this," he said, pulling up a document on his phone. It was a project summary. Florida coastal development, luxury mid-rise condos, expected completion late 2026, promised returns north of 20%. I scanned quickly. There was no permit number listed for the build site, no county reference. The escrow account was described as being held with a private financial partner, no bank name. "When are you signing?" I asked. "Tomorrow at 10. Victor set it up at his attorney's office. Everything's ready." He smiled like he was stepping into adulthood. "Does the project have a recorded land purchase?" I asked. He blinked. "I assume so. That's already handled." Assume. I kept my tone neutral. "Ryan, have you spoken to an independent attorney about this?" He frowned slightly. "Why would I? Victor's attorney drew up the paperwork." I let that sit between us. Across the room, my mother laughed again, a little too loudly. I watched her gesture toward Ryan and Lila, pride radiating off her like heat. She had wanted this image for years. A polished daughter-in-law, a financially ambitious son. I thought about the numbers again. $350,000. Equity from a house that still carried more than $200,000 in debt. A project without clear permits. A family that moved frequently and avoided specifics. I needed someone who would not be blinded by champagne and chandeliers. I slipped out toward the service corridor and found Marcus Bellamy near the catering prep area. He was reviewing seating adjustments with a clipboard in hand. Marcus looked up and immediately read my face. "What's wrong?" he asked quietly. "Have you ever heard of Victor Monroe before tonight?" I asked. He hesitated. "Not personally, but the name rings a bell. A couple years back, one of our investors mentioned a dispute in Arizona. Something about a stalled real estate venture and missing funds. I didn't follow up. It wasn't our property." "Dispute how?" I pressed. "Civil, I think. Lawsuit filed, then quietly settled or dismissed. It never hit national news." That was not proof. It was smoke. Marcus did not push for more explanation. He knew when I asked questions like this, it meant I had already seen something. "If you need anything," he said, "I'm here." I nodded and stepped farther down the hallway, away from the music. I called Natalie Brooks. She answered on the second ring. "Evelyn, is everything okay?" I explained quickly. Engagement party, investment tomorrow, Florida development, Monroe family. There was a brief silence as she typed. "That name has come up before," she said finally. "The Financial Crimes Division has been monitoring a small network operating under different LLC names. No formal charges yet. Patterns of high return promises, shifting identities. Not enough for indictment so far." "How long have they been on the radar?" I asked. "Since 2022. They stayed just under thresholds, change partners frequently, move between states." "Can they arrest them?" "Not without a trigger. They need evidence of active solicitation or clear misrepresentation under a current identity." I thanked her and hung up. Smoke was turning into structure. I called Tara Whitefield next. Tara had spent years at the SEC before going private. If there was paper, she could find it. I gave them the names: Victor Monroe, Claudia Monroe, Lila Monroe. "Send me any corporate filings or public documents you have access to," she said. "I'll cross-reference." While I waited, I returned to the ballroom. Lila was holding court near the bar, telling someone she had studied at NYU Stern. "That must have been intense," a guest said. "What year did you graduate?" Lila laughed lightly. "Time flies when you are building a life. It feels like yesterday." Not an answer. The pieces were small on their own. Together, they formed a shape I did not like. Ryan found me again, glass of champagne in hand. "I wanted you to see this," he said, pulling up a document on his phone. It was a project summary: Florida Coastal Development, luxury mid-rise condos, expected completion late 2026, promised returns north of 20%. I scanned quickly. There was no permit number listed for the build site, no county reference. The escrow account was described as being held with a private financial partner, no bank name. "When are you signing?" I asked. "Tomorrow at 10. Victor set it up at his attorney's office. Everything's ready." He smiled like he was stepping into adulthood. "Does the project have a recorded land purchase?" I asked. He blinked. "I assume so. That's already handled." Assume. I kept my tone neutral. "Ryan, have you spoken to an independent attorney about this?" He frowned slightly. "Why would I? Victor's attorney drew up the paperwork." I let that sit between us. Across the room, my mother laughed again, a little too loudly. I watched her gesture toward Ryan and Lila, pride radiating off her like heat. She had wanted this image for years. A polished daughter-in-law, a financially ambitious son. I thought about the numbers again. $350,000, equity from a house that still carried more than $200,000 in debt, a project without clear permits, a family that moved frequently and avoided specifics. I needed someone who would not be blinded by champagne and chandeliers. I slipped out toward the service corridor and found Marcus Bellamy near the catering prep area. He was reviewing seating adjustments with a clipboard in hand. Marcus looked up and immediately read my face. "What's wrong?" he asked quietly. "Have you ever heard of Victor Monroe before tonight?" I asked. He hesitated. "Not personally, but the name rings a bell. A couple years back, one of our investors mentioned a dispute in Arizona. Something about a stalled real estate venture and missing funds. I didn't follow up. It wasn't our property." "Dispute how?" I pressed. "Civil, I think. Lawsuit filed, then quietly settled or dismissed. It never hit national news." That was not proof. It was smoke. Marcus did not push for more explanation. He knew when I asked questions like this, it meant I had already seen something. "If you need anything," he said, "I'm here." I nodded and stepped farther down the hallway, away from the music. I called Natalie Brooks. She answered on the second ring. "Evelyn, is everything okay?" I explained quickly: engagement party, investment tomorrow, Florida development, Monroe family. There was a brief silence as she typed. "That name has come up before," she said finally. "The Financial Crimes Division has been monitoring a small network operating under different LLC names. No formal charges yet. Patterns of high return promises, shifting identities. Not enough for indictment so far." "How long have they been on the radar?" I asked. "Since 2022. They stay just under thresholds, change partners frequently, move between states." "Can they arrest them?" "Not without a trigger. They need evidence of active solicitation or clear misrepresentation under a current identity." I thanked her and hung up. Smoke was turning into structure. I called Tara Whitefield next. Tara had spent years at the SEC before going private. If there was paper, she could find it. I gave them the names: Victor Monroe, Claudia Monroe, Lila Monroe. "Send me any corporate filings or public documents you have access to," she said. "I'll cross-reference." While I waited, I returned to the ballroom. Lila was holding court near the bar, telling someone she had studied at NYU Stern. "That must have been intense," a guest said. "What year did you graduate?" Lila laughed lightly. "Time flies when you are building a life. It feels like yesterday." Not an answer. The pieces were small on their own. Together, they formed a shape I did not like. Ryan found me again, glass of champagne in hand. "I wanted you to see this," he said, pulling up a document on his phone. It was a project summary, Florida Coastal Development. Chapter 3, The Decision. The noise of the ballroom felt distant, like I was standing inside a glass box watching everyone else move in slow motion. Victor was still near the stage, adjusting the microphone, smiling with that easy confidence that made people lean in instead of step back. Leela stood close to Ryan, her hand resting lightly at the inside of his elbow, thumb moving in slow circles as if she were soothing him. I moved toward Ryan again before Victor could begin. "Ryan, look at me," I said quietly. He did. His eyes were bright, but there was something else there now, a flicker of doubt. "Have you seen the permit?" I asked again, more directly this time. He hesitated. "Victor said it's pending." "Pending is not a number," I said. "It's not documentation, it's a word." He shifted his weight. "You're assuming the worst." "Because I've seen the worst," I replied. "You haven't." He looked frustrated now, caught between irritation and unease. Maybe I'm just overthinking this. Before I could respond, Leela stepped in smoothly, her presence effortless and perfectly timed. "Oh my God, are we doing this again?" she said lightly. "Evelyn, you always turn everything into a crisis." She looked at Ryan, tilting her head in sympathy. "You don't have to prove yourself to anyone," she told him softly. "Not to your sister, not to anyone." Ryan nodded slowly, absorbing her words like they were oxygen. "I don't have to prove myself," he repeated, almost verbatim. The repetition hit me harder than the insult earlier had. It was not just influence, it was scripting. "Leela," I said calmly, "this isn't about proving anything. It's about verifying what you're asking him to sign." She gave a small laugh, shaking her head. "You're acting like we're stealing something." My eyes flicked to the necklace at her throat. "You are," I thought, but I did not say it. Ryan ran a hand through his hair. "Ev, I need you to stop. This is supposed to be a good night." "It can still be a good night," I said, "if you don't ruin tomorrow." He stared at me. "You think I'm stupid?" he said. "No," I said immediately. "I think you want this so badly that you're ignoring what doesn't fit." He opened his mouth to argue, then stopped. The music dipped lower as guests began turning their attention toward the stage. We were running out of time. I made the decision I had been holding back for years. "If you sign that agreement tomorrow without independent verification," I said quietly, "I'm done." Ryan frowned. "Done with what?" "With pretending," I said. "With letting you believe you've been carrying this family financially." His expression shifted from irritation to confusion. "What are you talking about?" "I've been sending money home since 2019, $2,500 a month, mortgage, utilities, groceries, medical bills. I never put my name on it. I never corrected anyone when they assumed it was you." His face went pale. "That's not true." "It is," I said. "Ask Mom." Leela's grip on his arm tightened slightly. "Ryan," she said gently, "this is manipulation. She's trying to scare you." "I'm trying to protect him," and for the first time that night, I felt my voice shake just slightly. Ryan looked between us, his confidence visibly cracking. "You never told me," he said, quieter now. "You never asked." That silence between us held years of imbalance, years of him being praised for sacrifices he never made, and me staying quiet because correcting it would have started a war I wasn't ready to fight. "I can't deal with this right now," he said finally, voice strained. "Not here." That's exactly why it's happening here, because this is where they're building trust, in front of witnesses. Leela's smile hardened. "You're jealous," she said plainly now, no sugarcoating. "You left, you built your little empire, and now you can't stand that Ryan has something real." Something real? The necklace glinted under the chandelier. I leaned in slightly. Real investments have permits. Real escrow accounts have banks. Real partners answer direct questions. Ryan swallowed hard. Before he could respond, Victor's voice boomed lightly over the microphone as he tested the sound again. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, smiling broadly, "thank you for being here to celebrate not only love, but the joining of two families." Applause rippled through the room. Ryan stood beside Leela now, hand resting at the small of her back. My mother stood front row, hands clasped tightly, eyes shining. Victor continued. "In addition to celebrating tonight, we are excited to share a unique opportunity with a small circle of trusted friends, a development project in Florida that promises exceptional returns." There it was, public solicitation. He gestured toward Ryan. "We are honored that Ryan will be joining us in this venture." My pulse slowed instead of speeding. Everything inside me aligned into focus. I looked at Leela one more time, at the necklace resting against her skin, at the confidence in her posture. Tonight, I thought, I am not just reclaiming a promise from my grandmother, I am reclaiming the truth. I glanced at the time on my phone. 8:57 p.m. Chapter 4. Public Reckoning. The room felt suspended in a thin layer of air that could shatter at any second. Victor stood at the center of the ballroom, champagne raised, posture confident, voice warm and practiced. "To family," he said smoothly. Glasses lifted. My mother smiled like she had finally arrived at the life she always imagined. Ryan stood beside Leela, proud and hopeful, unaware that the ground beneath him was already shifting. Victor continued, leaning into his role. "And to prosperity, to the kind of future you build with vision and courage. Some of you here tonight are trusted friends. Because of that, I would like to share a unique opportunity, a development project in Florida. Early positioning, exceptional returns, limited access." The words hung in the air, attractive and dangerous. I saw Marcus at the back of the room. I gave him the smallest nod. The screen behind Victor flickered. Ryan and Leela's engagement photos vanished. In their place appeared a legal document header. Arizona Superior Court, Civil Complaint, 2019. The reaction was immediate, but confused. A ripple of whispers spread across the ballroom. Victor turned sharply, smile faltering as he looked over his shoulder. "What's this?" someone near the front muttered. The next slide appeared. Two photographs side by side. Leela Monroe, Samantha Reed. Same face, same eyes, different name. A third slide followed. Bank transfers, LLC names, dates, patterns of deposits and withdrawals. Then a summary page. Estimated investor losses, $8.4 million between 2017 and 2023. Victor tried to laugh. "It seems we're having a technical malfunction," he said, voice tight. The screen did not change. Marcus stepped forward, composed. "For clarity," he said evenly, "the Ashbourne Grand is owned by Harper Hospitality Group. Please welcome the founder and chief executive officer, Evelyn Harper." The entire room turned toward me. My mother's face drained of color. Ryan looked stunned. Leela's composure hardened, eyes narrowing. I walked toward the stage, each step steady. "I'm Evelyn Harper," I said into the microphone, "Ryan's sister, owner of this hotel, and the person who refuses to let my family be misled." The word misled landed heavy. Victor stepped closer to me, anger simmering under his smile. "This is outrageous," he said. "You have no authority to make these accusations." I did not raise my voice. "The Florida project presented tonight lists no verifiable building permit number," I said clearly. There is no independent escrow account identified, and the woman introduced here as Leila Monroe appears in a 2019 civil fraud case under the name Samantha Reed. Gasps broke through the crowd. Leila lifted her chin. "You are jealous," she said. "You can't stand that Ryan chose me." I met her gaze without blinking. "This is not about jealousy," I said. "This is about documentation." Ryan looked from the screen to Leila. "What is she talking about?" he asked quietly. Leila tightened her grip on his arm. "Ryan, listen to me," she insisted. "This is a misunderstanding. You have to sign the memorandum. Just sign it. Show them you believe in the project. Once you sign, we can clear this up." Her voice trembled. Ryan stared at her. "You told me your name was Leila Monroe?" "It is," she insisted quickly. "Samantha is just paperwork, a legal technicality. That's all this is." Ryan's eyes moved slowly to the necklace resting at her collarbone. The pendant caught the chandelier light. "My grandmother's necklace." His jaw tightened. Without saying anything else, Ryan reached behind Leila's neck. She stiffened. "Ryan," whispered, fear flooding her voice, "what are you doing?" He unclasped the chain carefully. The faint metallic click echoed in the silent room. He lifted the necklace away from her skin and stepped toward me. He placed it in my palm. "I didn't know," he said quietly. "I swear I didn't know." The pendant was warm, familiar, heavier than I remembered. For a moment, everything else disappeared. The noise, the agents, the stares. All I could feel was the solid weight of something that had always been mine. Ruiz nodded to his agents. One agent stepped behind Victor and secured his wrists. Victor struggled briefly, outrage flaring. "Do you know who I am?" he shouted. Ruiz replied calmly, "Yes, that's why we're here." Another agent moved toward Leila. She pulled back, eyes wild now. "This is her doing," she hissed, glaring at me. "You let her do this." Ryan stepped away from her. "I don't know who you are," he said quietly. That was the fracture. Leila lunged forward suddenly, arm extending toward me as if she could snatch the necklace from my hand. The agent intercepted her mid-movement, gripping her wrist and guiding her arm behind her back with practiced precision. The cuffs snapped shut. Claudia was secured moments later, her protests soft and frantic. Victor continued shouting as he was led toward the doors, but the words no longer mattered. The three of them were escorted through the ballroom, past frozen guests, past my mother, who stood motionless, past the floral arrangements and champagne towers that now looked absurd against the truth. The doors opened. They were led out. The doors closed. Silence fell over the room like a curtain. Chapter 5. Aftermath. In the weeks that followed, the silence in that ballroom stretched far beyond that single night. It lingered in headlines, in whispered conversations at church, in the cautious way neighbors looked at our house when they drove by. By January 2025, the federal case was no longer rumor, it was public record. Victor Monroe and Samantha Reed were formally charged in federal court. Wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering. The language was cold and procedural, stripped of glamour. Their bank accounts were frozen, assets seized. Several LLC entities tied to their network were dissolved under court supervision. At their initial hearing, prosecutors outlined the pattern. Investors promised high-yield returns. Funds routed through layered entities. Transfers masked as development expenses. The total confirmed loss exceeded $8 million across multiple states. Bail was set at $2 million and denied. Judge Ellen Porter cited flight risk and the scope of financial deception. Trial dates were scheduled for later in the year. For once, the narrative was not controlled by charm. It was controlled by evidence. Charlotte moved on quickly, as cities do, but for our family, the reckoning was slower. My mother stopped attending social events. She did not answer phone calls she normally would have taken. The pride that had once filled her posture now seemed to press her shoulders down. When I went to see her in early January, she was sitting at the dining table surrounded by paperwork, mortgage statements, bank summaries, insurance documents. The house felt smaller than I remembered, like the illusion of prosperity had been propping up the walls. She looked up when I walked in. "I was wrong," she said immediately. There was no defensiveness in her tone, no attempt to justify, just exhaustion. "I wanted it to be true," she continued. "I wanted him to marry into something impressive. I wanted people to look at our family differently." I sat across from her without speaking. "I thought you would be fine no matter what," she added. "You always are." That was the part that stung, the assumption that strength equals indifference. She slid a manila envelope toward me. We had found it together the week before in an old file box. Inside was my grandmother's letter from 2014. The paper was slightly yellowed now, the handwriting careful and deliberate. "The necklace belongs to Evelyn. She builds her own future. She does not borrow it." My mother had read those lines aloud once when my grandmother first wrote them. Now she read them again, voice trembling. "I gave it away because I thought it would smooth things over," she whispered. "I thought it would make Leela feel included. I told myself you would not mind." "I did mind," I said softly. She nodded, tears slipping down her face. "I see that now." We found the updated will from 2013 as well. Signed, notarized, clear. There was no ambiguity. That afternoon did not end in dramatic reconciliation. There was no sudden transformation, but something shifted. For the first time in years, my mother stopped talking about how things looked and started talking about how things were. Ryan came by later that week. He looked thinner, not physically, but emotionally stripped down. The confidence he had worn like a tailored suit was gone. "I terminated everything," he said as soon as he sat down. "The investment agreement, any preliminary documents. I hired an independent advisor. I'm restructuring my student loans properly." He looked at me directly. "I wanted to be the one who made it happen," he admitted. "I wanted to show Mom I could build something big. You still can, just not by chasing shortcuts." He nodded. I should have listened, and I should have asked where the money was coming from all those years. There it was, the acknowledgement. For years, I had transferred $2,500 every month without a word, covering utilities, helping with mortgage payments, filling in gaps that my mother quietly ignored and Ryan assumed he had closed. "I'm not doing that anymore," I said calmly. He did not argue. "I don't expect you to," he replied. Instead of silent transfers, we sat at the same dining table and went through numbers: income, expenses, debt, realistic repayment timelines. It was not glamorous, it was not impressive, but it was honest. "If I help going forward," I said, "it will be documented and transparent. No more pretending it's coming from somewhere else." My mother nodded slowly. Pride had finally given way to humility. By February, the house no longer felt like a stage set. It felt like a place where conversations happened without performance. At the Ashburn Grand, business continued. Weddings, conferences, corporate retreats. The ballroom where everything collapsed was booked again within weeks. Guests danced under the same chandeliers, unaware of what had happened there. One evening in late February, I hosted a small private dinner at the hotel. Not a spectacle, just close friends and a few key business partners who had supported me long before that engagement night. Before heading downstairs, I stood in front of the mirror in my suite and fastened the necklace around my own neck. The pendant rested against my skin, cool at first, then warming. When I entered the dining room, no one gasped, no one whispered. There were no flashing screens or raised voices, just conversation, genuine laughter, the quiet hum of people who respected one another without needing to prove anything. Ryan arrived carrying a simple bottle of wine. He no longer looked like a man chasing validation. He looked like someone rebuilding from solid ground. My mother followed shortly after. She paused when she saw the necklace. "It was always yours," she said. "Yes," I replied. We did not revisit the past that night. We did not dissect every misstep. The reckoning had already happened. Meanwhile, the federal case continued its slow, deliberate march. Motions filed, evidence reviewed, asset tracing expanded. The system did not move with drama, it moved with documentation. That was the kind of justice I trusted. Not loud revenge, not spectacle, procedure. As spring approached, I realized something I had not allowed myself to consider before. I was no longer angry. Not because what happened was small, it was not, but because the imbalance had been corrected, the truth had surfaced, the illusion had been dismantled, and I had not needed to scream to make it happen. I had needed preparation. I had needed facts. I had needed boundaries. The night of the engagement party could have ended with humiliation for me. Instead, it ended with clarity for everyone. If you had ever been underestimated in your own family, if you have ever been asked to shrink so someone else could feel taller, understand this. Preparation is quiet. Boundaries are uncomfortable. Truth does not always arrive politely, but when it arrives, it stands. If this story resonated with you, stay with me. There are more stories about strength, accountability, and the kind of justice that doesn't need to be loud to be real.